Hello everyone. So today's video is going to be over our rates and proportion notes. So at this time, please make sure you have your journal ready to go with a pencil so you can write things down. All right, first of all, a ratio is a comparison of two quantities. So an example would be a ratio of 3 nails to 5 hammers. Sometimes you may just have some weird situations that we compare in that. Now, please write this down. We have 3 ways of writing ratios. So I'm going to use the 3 to 5 example from above. We can use the word to, and we would say 3 to 5. You can also use the colon, and that means the same thing, 3 to 5. A fraction is another ratio, so I can write 3 to 5 as well. Now, most of the time, you're going to have some sort of label to go along with it. For this example, I'm just going to leave it as it is. Now, one thing to note is ratios are written in the order that they are written in the problem. Make sure you write that down. Also, since a fraction is a type of ratio, write this down. Always simplify your ratios. All right, so let's talk about our first situation, a part-to-part ratio, where we are comparing two different parts. So in an example, I have 7 boy puppies to 4 girl puppies. These are two different parts of a whole. So an example I have, what is the ratio of apples to oranges? So note that when I write my ratio, apples is going to come first since it was written first. So let's count. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 apples. I'm going to write it with my label. Now, oranges comes last, so let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have 9 oranges. So if I look at this, or even if I want to rewrite this in a fraction format, this can be simplified. This actually can be simplified by 3. That is my greatest common factor. So I'm going to divide both the top and the bottom number by 3. So 6 divided by 3 gives me 2. 9 divided by 3 gives me 3. So I would write for my ratio that we have 2 apples to 3 oranges. That would be my final answer. Now our next situation is a part to whole ratio, where we're comparing one part to the whole. So my example is 7 boy puppies to 11 total puppies. Well, this time I'm only comparing boys to the total. I'm not comparing boys to girls. So with this problem, what is the ratio of girls to the total number of students? So we have to note that girls came first in the problem and the total of students came last. So if you'd like to try this on your own, you can pause the video. If not, I'm going to continue on. So the first thing I need to do is I need to count the total number of girls that we have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to write on here 5 girls. Now let's count the number of total students. So I have to include my count of the girls. So once again, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So since I have 20 students total, I'm going to write 20 students. Now, I know looking at this if I rewrite this as a fraction, I get 5 over 20. And I know this can be simplified with my greatest common factor being 5. So 5 divided by 5 gives me 1. 20 divided by 5 gives me 4. So I'm going to rewrite my final answer as, for every one girl, there are 4 total students. And I should have written total there earlier, so that's my bad. So 4 total students. And that would be my final answer. So now, that was talking about ratios. Now we need to talk about what in the world is a proportion. A proportion is an equation, which means you use an equal sign, stating that two ratios or rates are equivalent, meaning same. Okay, so I'm looking to have my ratios equal each other. Now, please write all this info down. Steps for setting up a proportion. We are going to be referring to this a lot, so have it set up. Step 1, write a word ratio, meaning what two things are you comparing? Step 2, set up the first ratio using the given information. Step 3, set up the second ratio using a variable for what you have to find. And step 4, solve using the butterfly method. So first of all, a variable, you'll need to write this vocabulary word down, is a letter used to represent a number we do not know. So basically with proportions, we're looking for a mystery number. Okay, we want to figure out what that mystery is. And we're going to solve using the butterfly method, which we'll talk about on the next slide. All right, so this is what an example of a proportion looks like, where we have two ratios, okay, and we have a missing value. We don't know what P equals. P is that variable, okay, so P is the variable, that unknown. So what we're going to do is, let's talk about how to actually solve the problem before we go about writing it, okay? So the first thing is, we're going to use that butterfly method. Okay, so the first step in the butterfly method is you need to cross multiply. Now, what I mean by cross multiply is you're going to look for the two numbers in the diagonal, okay, that are both there. So in this situation, 4 and 12 are both in the diagonal versus the letter P and the number 6. Well, P is not a number just yet, so I can't do anything there. So I'm going to multiply 12 times 4, and I get 48. Now, once I multiply those two numbers, I'm done. I don't need them anymore. What I do need is this leftover 6. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide. And I'm going to put underneath my division sign the number 48. So whatever you get from multiplying, that's what you put underneath the division sign. And whatever is left over in the diagonal, so in this case a 6, is what goes on the outside. Now I can divide. I know that 6 goes into 48 8 times. And I get 8. Whatever is on top is going to be your answer. So we would say in this situation that P equals 8. So if you're given a problem like this, all you have to do is do the butterfly method. Cross multiply and then divide. Make sure you have all this written down. So now let's talk about our situation that you're going to see most of the time. So unfortunately, when it comes to proportions, you're going to see lots and lots of word problems. But what we need to know how to do is how to dissect the word problem, how to break it apart. So the problem states the ratio of ticks to fleas on Laura's dog Ripley is 20 to 60. Poor dog. How many fleas would you expect to find on her cat Lily if she has 40 ticks? So our first step that we have to do is write that word ratio. Once again, you should have those 4 steps written down. If you do not from earlier, please go back. So the word ratio is, what in the world am I comparing? Well, if I reread the sentence, it says the ratio of ticks to fleas. So since ticks comes first, I'm going to write this in a fraction format and put ticks on top. Our second step, we're going to write the info given to us. So we know poor Laura's dog Ripley, it has 20 to 60. This means Ripley has 20 ticks for every 60 fleas. Then I'm going to write an equal sign. And then our last step is write what we are looking for. So in this problem, I am looking for how many fleas. The fleas is going to be the unknown. Well, since I have fleas on bottom, I'm going to put my X on bottom. How many would you expect to find our cat Lily if she has 40 ticks? So that's going to go on top. All right, so something I want to make sure is that everything on top has a matching label, as well as everything on bottom. And here it checks out. All right, our last step is to solve. We're going to do our butterfly method. So remember, my first step in the butterfly method is to cross multiply. Well, the only diagonal with 2 numbers in it is 60 and 40. So I'm going to multiply 60 times 40. And I get 2,400. Then I'm going to take that number, which I got, put it underneath my division sign. I'm done with these two. Whatever is left over is what I need to divide by. So 20 can go to 24 one time. 20 can go into 40 two times. And 20 cannot go into 0. Therefore, I have 120 on top. So we would say my answer is X equals 120 fleas. Now, something else I forgot to mention is your variable may be a ton of different letters, okay? It could be any letter that relates to the problem. Most of the time, however, you're going to see X. So X equals 120 fleas would be my final answer. Make sure you have all this written down on your paper. So now, I want you to try this problem on your own. It says Cheryl made 11 out of 22 free throws. How many would you expect her to make if she shot a total of 88 free throws? So what I'm going to do for y'all is I'm going to help you set up your word ratio because this one can be a little confusing. Okay, so she made 11 out of 22. That means 11 shots were made out of 22. So I'm going to write shots made over free throws. So go ahead, take a moment using this word ratio and set up your proportion, and you'll check your work with mine. All right, so hopefully you set your proportion to look something like mine. I shortened my labels a little bit just because I don't have that much room. Okay, so we have shots made out of the free throws total. Okay, so my next step, since I have this all set up, is to cross multiply. So I know that 11 and 88 are in the diagonal, so I'm going to multiply those. And I get 968, so that needs to go underneath my division sign. And I'm done with these two numbers. Now I have 22 left over. So 22 can go into 96 4 times. Bring down my 8. 22 can go into 88 4 times. And I have 44 as my answer. So we would say Cheryl made 44 shots. Now, on this one, something I want to point out. Okay, so the problem says 9 boxes of markers cost $11.50. Set up a proportion to determine how much 7 boxes of markers would cost. Well, how you set this one up with what comes first. So you may say, well, Miss Davis, you told us to put whatever comes first. It's what I write on top. Yes. However, in the situation where we talk about money, and we'll see more about this in our next lesson, the cost is going to go on top. It'll just make your life a little easier. So in this situation, I have the cost to the markers. All right, so once again, pause the video, and I want you to try this on your own. All right, so I know from my problem, we know that for $11.50, you get 9 boxes of markers. I don't know how much 7 boxes would cost. So that's why the X is in my spot with money, the cost. All right, so pause the video again and go ahead and solve. All right, so if I do the butterfly method, I have to cross multiply. So 1150 times 7 gives me 80.50. Now I am done with those numbers. I put this total underneath. The 9 is left over, so that's what I have to divide by now. So I know 9 can go into 80 8 times. Don't forget, you should have brought that decimal up in the beginning. I know 9 can go into 85 9 times. I know 9 can go into 40 4 times. So since we're talking about money, we may have to keep going on. 4 left over, add a 0, bring it down. 9 can go into 40 4 times. And it looks like we are going to get what we talked about, and that's called a repeating decimal. So since we are talking about money, we'll need to round to 2 decimal places. In this case, all right, this 4, all right, is less than 5. So I'm going to round this to $8. So X equals $8.94 as my final answer. So once again, sometimes you may get repeating decimals. You can cut it off once you get to the thousandths place, so 3 decimal places. Make sure you have this all written down. So now, that is the end of our notes for today. Let's talk about what in the world do I need to complete in order to get credit? You will not have a homework assignment for today, but you do have an exit ticket that you can find underneath week 9 for you to complete. Okay, so once again, your exit ticket will be underneath week 9, and it is due by 11:59 p.m. tonight. Please get that taken care of.